Hi there, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Aaron Green with the Fusion HCM family, and with me today is Gretchen Alarcon. We're here to talk about the business of HR. Gretchen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Gretchen, number one question that comes to mind is, what's changed in the business of HR over the last few years?
You know, I think if you think about the changes overall within an HR organization, they're spending much more time out in the business consulting with their leaders. They're spending time talking about talent, they're talking a lot more about how they have better employee engagement, and they're talking much more about the measures that are important within their organizations.
Right, so there's obviously, all of that makes a lot of sense, but there's obviously an amount of tools and technology and processes that probably go along with delivering that kind of service.
Sure, absolutely. You know, it used to be that we would think about HR transactions, and so we talked about technology in terms of what does an HR user need to do. That still is very important. There's no question. This is their job. But now we're thinking much more about what kinds of technology do managers need to have? What kinds of technology do employees need to have? That's different because they don't spend as much time doing transactions. We do want them to engage. And more than that, we want them to engage using tools that they're familiar with. So it's not just about going to an unfamiliar website. It needs to become something that becomes a practice for them, which means we need to use the tools that they have, such as mobile, such as more access from within their laptops, et cetera.
So Gretchen, what's the role of business intelligence and how does that really factor into how an HR organization can perform?
You know, if you think about HR, in the past, they focused much more on HR measures. How many people did I hire? In what time frame? And I think what they're being asked to do now is very different. They're asked to talk about those things still because those are important HR measures of efficiency. But what they're being asked to do now is provide much more information to the management team and the leadership team around the metrics that really matter to them. What is the performance of my organization? Who are my top performers? Where did they come from? How do I replicate that success? And then even looking further forward and saying, what could happen in my organization? Who might be at risk of leaving? How could I predict someone's going to be a top performer? So it's a very different approach to business intelligence than it was 5 years ago.
Well, so that probably plays quite a bit into where the business of HR is actually going in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. I think that what we're going to see more and more of is instead of people thinking about HR as the planners of the picnics and the people who are engaging with people, they'll still be doing a lot of engagement work, but rather than thinking about it purely about compliance, there'll be much more of a focus on how do I engage my employees? How do I help them increase their productivity? And how do I make sure that as an organization, we are looking at our talent not just for today, but what do we need to have in the next 2, 5, and on years? And are we promoting and retaining the right people within our organizations?
Right, that makes sense. So Gretchen, we've talked about the world of HR changing. What about the role of HR within this new world?
You know, when I first started my career in HR, I was brought in to do a redesign of human resources, and I thought my job was to put my job out of business. Basically, all of this work was going to go to the managers, and there'd be no more need for an HR person. And having seen how this has changed over my career, I think there is still a very specific need for HR professionals in an organization. They're the ones who are not only tasked with looking at the day-to-day things like, did the payroll go out on time, are we recruiting, but they're also looking at how do I work more with employee engagement, and how do I take a look not at what our company is trying to achieve just right now, but what are our strategies, and what people are we bringing in, and how are we making sure we're retaining and enhancing the quality of our workforce in terms of abilities, in terms of our execution. And that's something that really is an HR task that's very different from what a manager does. So I actually think the role of HR is going to continue to be even more strategic.
So just much more of an ongoing partnership with the line of business.
Ongoing partnership, and again being that consultative role, which I think is something that a lot of HR people have been aspiring to.
Last question for you, but what advice do you give to your HR colleagues as they're planning out their HR and HCM roadmaps?
I think that a couple of things they need to think about from an HR and HCM roadmap. First and foremost is identifying what the business is trying to accomplish. There are definitely going to be things that HR as an organization wants to work on, but they'll have much more success if those are aligned with where the business is trying to go. What is your organization trying to achieve, and what are the HR strategies that need to be there in order to enable them? And then what technology is going to be needed to help you be successful in enacting those strategies.
Right, and I'd imagine the technology vendor is equally important as well.
Definitely. If you start thinking about those longer term engagements, you're not talking about just buying the software today, although there is probably a specific need that is leading you to do an assessment. But what you really want to think about in terms of a partner is who's going to be with you now and in the future, and who can bring not just the technology, but the partnership, the thought leadership, being able to have the financial resources and the scale to have innovative tools and bring even more new ideas, because the world of HR is evolving and technology needs to evolve along with where the HR is going.
Right. Well, Gretchen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in. To learn more about Fusion HCM, visit us at www.oracle.com/HCM. Join us for more of these webcasts, as well as our Fusion Fridays, all on www.oracle.com/HCM.